My son-in-law tossed out my things and moved his mom into my room. He instantly regretted it. Evelyn had lived in the house long enough that the walls felt like old friends. She had painted them herself, one room at a time, when the children were young and money was tight. Every corner held a quiet memory. The small crack near the kitchen door came from the winter when pipes froze and burst. The mark on the staircase rail was from the day her daughter ran down too fast and laughed instead of crying. After her husband passed, the house did not feel empty to Evelyn. It felt calm. It felt earned. She woke each morning with the sun touching the curtains and brewed her tea slowly, letting the kettle sing while she looked out at the garden she had planted with her own hands. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Her days followed a gentle rhythm. She cleaned a little, cooked a little, read in the afternoon, and took short walks when the weather allowed. She spoke to neighbors when they passed and waved to children riding bikes. She liked knowing everyone but not being rushed by anyone. The house gave her that peace. It had carried her through joy and loss, and she believed it would carry her through whatever came next. When Laura told her she was getting married, Evelyn felt a mix of happiness and worry. She wanted her daughter to be loved and safe. She also knew how hard the world could be. Laura had always been strong, but she had also always been eager to please. When Evelyn met Mark, she noticed right away that he spoke with confidence and certainty. He talked about plans, about the future, about how things should be done. He was polite, but his politeness felt measured, like something he put on carefully. Still, Evelyn told herself not to judge too quickly. Everyone shows their best face at first, she thought. When the wedding was over and the excitement faded, Laura and Mark came to her with a request. They wanted to live with her for a while. Just until they saved enough money. Just until they found their own place. Evelyn did not hesitate. Family helps family. That was how she had been raised, and how she had lived. She opened her home without conditions. She cleared closet space. She moved her keepsakes to make room. She smiled when they brought in boxes and filled the quiet house with new sounds. Laughter echoed again in the halls, and for a moment, Evelyn felt young. She cooked larger meals and made sure Mark had what he liked. She listened when Laura talked late into the night about work and plans and hopes. It was Mark who suggested that they take the master bedroom. He said it made sense. He said a married couple needed privacy and space. He said Evelyn would be more comfortable in a smaller room, easier to clean, closer to the bathroom. His voice was calm, reasonable, and almost helpful. Evelyn looked at Laura, waiting for her to say something. Laura smiled softly and said it was only temporary. Evelyn nodded. Of course. Temporary. She packed her things slowly. Each item carried a story, but she told herself stories could live anywhere. The smaller room had been a guest room once. She made it her own with familiar sheets and a small lamp. The first night she slept there, she felt a strange tightness in her chest, but she pushed it away. Sacrifice was normal. Mothers did this all the time. Love meant making space. At first, everything seemed fine. Mark thanked her for the meal. He offered to fix small things around the house. He talked about respect and order, about how a family worked best when everyone knew their place. Evelyn listened and nodded, though the words felt odd. She had never thought of family as a ladder. To her, it had always been a circle. Little things began to change. Mark started commenting on how the house was run. He suggested new rules for shared spaces. He liked the living room arranged a certain way and moved chairs without asking. He asked Evelyn to let him know before having visitors. He said it was about comfort, about being considerate. His tone was always calm, but there was an edge underneath, like a door quietly closing. Laura seemed tired more often. She laughed less. When Evelyn asked if everything was okay, Laura said work was busy. Mark said it was normal stress. He answered for her more than once, and Evelyn noticed how Laura would stop mid-sentence and let him finish. It made Evelyn uneasy, but she told herself she was imagining things. She did not want to be the kind of mother who interfered. Meals changed too. Mark talked more and listened less. He corrected Evelyn over small details, like how much salt to use or when to serve dinner. He spoke about traditions, about how families should show respect to the head of the household. The words sat heavy in the air. Evelyn smiled and kept serving food, telling herself it was just talk. One evening, she heard Mark say that the house needed stronger leadership. He said it casually, like a joke. But his eyes were serious. Evelyn felt a chill, though the room was warm. She remembered the years she had managed everything alone after her husband died. Bills, repairs, decisions. No one had called her weak then. No one had questioned her leadership. She began to retreat into her smaller room more often. It was easier than feeling out of place in her own living room. She read longer, listened to the sounds of the house changing around her. The floors creaked differently now, under different steps. The television was louder. Doors closed more firmly. Mark started talking about family hierarchy more openly. He said it was important for harmony. He said confusion caused problems. Evelyn listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She wanted to say that harmony came from kindness, not control. But the words stayed in her throat. She did not want to upset Laura. She did not want conflict. One afternoon, Evelyn overheard Mark telling Laura that her mother was set in her ways. He said change was hard for older people. He said it kindly, but it felt dismissive. Evelyn stood still in the hallway, her heart pounding. She realized then that her generosity had slowly shifted the balance of the house. What she had given freely was now being taken as expected. She reminded herself of who she was. She reminded herself that this was her home. But reminding and acting are not the same. Each day, the line between guest and owner felt thinner. Mark spoke with more authority. Laura deferred more often. Evelyn felt smaller, though nothing about her had changed. Still, she held on to hope. She believed love would smooth things out. She believed time would help. She believed that families bend but do not break. In the quiet of her room, she whispered these thoughts to herself, like promises. She did not yet know how costly those promises would become. For now she held on, trusting that kindness would be returned, unaware that her trust was already being tested. Evelyn had gone out that morning like she always did. A short walk, a stop at the small shop on the corner, a quiet moment to herself. The air felt heavier than usual, but she blamed the weather. She carried her bag home slowly, already thinking about making tea and sitting by the window. Nothing prepared her for what waited behind her front door. The moment she stepped inside, something felt wrong. The house sounded different. Too quiet, yet tense, like a place that had been disturbed and was holding its breath. She noticed it first in the hallway. Boxes were stacked along the wall. Brown boxes, sealed with tape, some labeled in rushed handwriting. Her handwriting. Or something close to it. Her heart began to pound. She walked further in, her steps unsteady. The living room was changed. A chair she always sat in was pushed to the side. The picture frame that once held a family photo was gone from the shelf. She felt as if she were walking through someone else's house, not her own. She moved toward her room, the smaller one she had accepted without complaint. The door was open. Inside, the bed was bare. The quilt she had sewn years ago was folded into a box. Her clothes were gone from the wardrobe. The drawer where she kept letters and small keepsakes was empty. Some boxes were half open, things shoved inside without care. She saw a cracked photo frame and felt her throat tighten. Evelyn stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. Her hands trembled as she touched the edge of a box, as if to confirm it was real. She whispered her own name once, softly, like she might wake up from a dream. Footsteps sounded behind her. Mark's voice came next, calm and flat. He told her not to make a mess. He said everything had been organized. He said it was for the best. She turned slowly. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than concerned. Laura stood behind him, eyes fixed on the floor. Evelyn searched her daughter's face for an explanation, for shock, for protest. She found none. Only silence. Mark explained it as if he were talking about rearranging furniture. He said his mother had arrived earlier that day. He said she needed space. He said the house worked better this way. His mother would take the larger room. Permanently. Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The words did not make sense. Her room. Her home. She looked at Laura again, waiting. Laura's hands were clasped together tightly. She did not look up. Mark sighed, as if Evelyn were being difficult. He said she should be grateful. He said many people her age did not even have a roof over their heads. He reminded her that she still had a room. He spoke slowly, carefully, like he was teaching a lesson. Something inside Evelyn cracked. Not loudly. Not in a way anyone else could see. It was the quiet breaking of dignity. She felt heat rise to her face, followed by a cold numbness. She had never been spoken to like this in her own home. She asked about her things. Some were missing. A few boxes were lighter than they should be. Mark shrugged. He said things get lost during moves. He said not everything was important. When she mentioned a damaged item, he said accidents happen. Evelyn wanted to scream. Instead, she nodded. Years of patience held her still. Years of choosing peace over conflict. She bent down and lifted one of the boxes, though it was heavier than she expected. No one offered to help. Mark walked away, already done with the conversation. Laura remained frozen. Evelyn passed her slowly, hoping her daughter would say something, anything. Laura's lips parted, then closed again. Her silence was louder than Mark's words. Evelyn carried the box to her small room. It felt smaller than ever now. The walls seemed closer. The air felt thin. She stacked the boxes carefully, trying to make order out of chaos. Her hands moved automatically while her mind lagged behind. Later, she heard a new voice in the house. Mark's mother. Loud, confident, already settled. Evelyn heard drawers opening, footsteps claiming space. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the floor. Memories flooded her mind. The day she bought the house. The nights she stayed up worrying about repairs. The holidays she hosted. The sacrifices she made without question. All of it felt erased in a single afternoon. She tried to speak to Laura that evening. She knocked softly on the door. Laura opened it just enough to look out. Evelyn asked why this had happened without warning. Laura's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. She said Mark had decided. She said arguing would make things worse. Evelyn realized then that fear had taken root where trust once lived. Her daughter was no longer just quiet. She was afraid. That night, Evelyn did not sleep. Every sound felt sharp. Laughter from the other room felt cruel. She felt invisible, like furniture that had been moved and forgotten. In the morning, Mark acted as if nothing had happened. He spoke about breakfast plans. He spoke about schedules. He did not look at Evelyn. She ate quietly, her hands shaking slightly around her cup. Mark's mother sat in her old place, speaking loudly, commenting on the house as if it were hers. No one corrected her. Evelyn understood then that something had shifted beyond repair. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a takeover. She returned to her room and closed the door. She sat among her boxes and let the weight of it all settle. She felt humiliated. She felt displaced. She felt erased. Yet beneath the pain, something else began to stir. A quiet awareness. A memory of strength she thought she had lost. She had built this life once before. She had survived worse than this. For now, she stayed silent. She observed. She waited. The betrayal hurt deeply, but it also opened her eyes. And once opened, they would not close again. Evelyn did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She did not beg. After that day, she became quieter, but not weaker. From the outside, it looked like she was shrinking into herself. In truth, she was paying attention. She moved through the house carefully, like someone walking through unfamiliar ground. She spoke only when needed. She smiled politely. She kept her thoughts to herself. Mark seemed pleased by this. He mistook her silence for acceptance. Each morning, Evelyn woke early. Before the house stirred, she sat on the edge of her bed and breathed slowly. She reminded herself that panic would help no one. Clarity would. She began to notice patterns. Mark decided everything. When meals were eaten. When lights were turned off. When guests were allowed. He spoke as if the house belonged to him. He corrected Evelyn in front of others. He referred to her room as the spare. His mother followed his lead. She did not hide her dislike. She criticized Evelyn's cooking, her habits, even the way she walked. She spoke loudly, as if Evelyn were hard of hearing or not worth addressing directly. She took over cabinets, shelves, and corners of the house, filling them with her belongings. Evelyn listened. She observed. She stored every word, every look. One afternoon, while the others were out, Evelyn went to the small cupboard where old papers were kept. It had not been opened in years. Inside were folders, envelopes, and memories wrapped in dust. She sat on the floor and opened them slowly. Papers from the time the house was purchased. Bills with her name on them. Documents signed long before Mark was part of their lives. She felt her heart steady as she read. The house was hers. Not partly. Not conditionally. Fully. She closed her eyes and let that truth settle. She had not imagined it. She had not forgotten. She had simply been pushed aside. Over the next few days, she gathered more. Old bank statements. Letters. Agreements made after her husband passed. Everything told the same story. She kept the papers hidden, returning them carefully after each look. Mark's behavior grew worse. He no longer pretended to be polite. He reminded Evelyn of rules she had never agreed to. He complained when she used the kitchen too long. He told her she was lucky to be there. His mother laughed when Evelyn walked past. She spoke about real owners and respect. She moved Evelyn's things without asking. Once, she threw away a small item Evelyn had kept for years. When Evelyn asked about it, she was told it was old and useless. Evelyn felt the sting, but she did not react. She nodded. She apologized even when she had done nothing wrong. Each apology cost her pride, but it bought her time. Laura watched all of this quietly. Sometimes Evelyn caught her daughter looking at her with guilt in her eyes. Sometimes fear. Laura spoke less now too. The house had become a place where silence meant safety. At night, Evelyn lay awake and thought. She thought about how quickly kindness had been turned into weakness. She thought about how easily people took what was given without limits. She also thought about herself. About the woman she had been when life was harder than this. When she had faced loss and still stood. One evening, Mark announced changes to the house rules. He spoke as if he were doing everyone a favor. Evelyn listened, hands folded in her lap. She felt something shift inside her. Not anger. Resolve. This would not continue. She did not know yet exactly how things would unfold. But she knew one thing clearly. She would no longer disappear in her own home. The next day, she began planning quietly. She made notes in her head. She remembered dates. She recalled conversations. She prepared. Mark and his mother continued as before, unaware. They laughed louder. They spoke more boldly. Power made them careless. Evelyn remained calm. She cooked. She cleaned. She watched. One afternoon, she held the documents again and felt something she had not felt in weeks. Confidence. She had survived grief. She had survived loneliness. She could survive this too. And this time, she would not survive by staying silent forever. She would survive by standing up, when the moment was right. Evelyn chose a quiet morning. The house was awake, but not busy. Sunlight came through the windows in soft lines, touching the floor she had cleaned so many times before. She moved calmly, making tea, setting cups on the table as if it were an ordinary day. Her hands did not shake. Inside, her heart was steady in a way it had not been for months. Mark and his mother sat in the living room, talking about plans. Their voices were confident, careless. Laura stood near the doorway, half listening, half lost in her thoughts. Evelyn watched them for a moment, then spoke. She said she needed everyone to sit down. Her voice was gentle, but firm. Something in her tone made them pause. Mark frowned but obeyed. His mother looked annoyed, as if being interrupted was an insult. Evelyn sat across from them. She placed a folder on the table. It was plain, worn at the edges. She rested her hands on top of it and took a slow breath. She said she wanted to clear something up. She said there had been confusion about the house. She spoke without anger, without blame. Just facts. Mark leaned back, arms crossed, already smiling. He said there was nothing to discuss. He said everything was settled. Evelyn nodded. Then she opened the folder. She explained that the house was in her name. Only her name. It always had been. She explained that no changes had ever been made. No transfers. No shared ownership. She had the documents to prove it. Mark laughed once. A short sound. He said she was mistaken. Evelyn slid the papers across the table. The room grew quiet. His mother leaned forward, squinting at the pages. Mark's smile faded as he scanned the words. He read again, slower this time. His jaw tightened. Evelyn continued. She said she had allowed them to stay out of kindness. She said that kindness had been taken for granted. She said she had been disrespected in her own home. Mark interrupted her, his voice sharp now. He said this was unnecessary. He said family did not threaten family. Evelyn met his eyes. She said family also did not erase family. She reached into the folder and took out another envelope. She placed it on the table, sliding it toward him. She said these were formal eviction papers. For a moment, no one moved. Mark's mother was the first to react. She raised her voice, accusing Evelyn of cruelty, of betrayal. She said Evelyn was heartless, throwing them out like strangers. Evelyn listened quietly. When the shouting stopped, she spoke again. She said she had been made to feel like a stranger in her own house. She said this decision had not been rushed. It had been necessary. Mark stood up suddenly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. He said she could not do this. He said he had rights. Evelyn remained seated. She said he did not. The words hung in the air. Laura had not spoken yet. She stared at the papers, then at Mark. Her face was pale. Something was breaking inside her, slowly and painfully. She asked him if it was true. She asked why he had never told her. Mark tried to speak, but his words tangled. He blamed misunderstandings. He blamed stress. He said he had been protecting her. Laura shook her head. She said protection did not look like control. She said love did not feel like fear. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. She talked about the rules, the silence, the way she had learned to keep quiet to avoid conflict. She looked at Evelyn with tears in her eyes and apologized. Evelyn felt the weight of those words, but she did not interrupt. This was Laura's moment. Mark's confidence was gone now. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair. His mother tried to defend him, but her words sounded weak. Evelyn said they would be given time to leave. She said she wanted no chaos, no shouting. Just closure. That afternoon, the news began to spread. A neighbor asked why there was tension. Evelyn told the truth, simply. Another neighbor had noticed changes, boxes, raised voices. The story moved quietly, from one person to another. Extended family heard too. Calls were made. Questions were asked. Mark's version of events did not hold up. Too many details did not match. People who had once greeted him warmly now kept their distance. Invitations stopped. Conversations ended quickly. Mark felt the shift. He noticed the looks, the silence. The respect he thought he commanded faded. His mother blamed everyone but herself. She said people were ungrateful. She said they were jealous. Laura moved back toward her mother, slowly. She helped Evelyn sort through boxes. She listened more. She spoke honestly for the first time in a long while. Evelyn felt tired, but lighter. The house felt different already. The air moved freely again. Mark avoided her now. When he did speak, his voice was smaller. The illusion of control had collapsed. Evelyn did not celebrate. She simply reclaimed what had always been hers. The truth had come out, quietly but firmly. And once spoken, it could not be undone. Evelyn woke up that morning to a silence that felt different from before. It was not heavy or tense. It was clear. The house seemed to breathe again. Sunlight filled the rooms without resistance, touching the walls like a gentle promise. Evelyn stood in the kitchen for a long moment, holding her cup, listening. No raised voices. No sharp footsteps. Just the quiet she remembered. She knew the day would not be easy. Truth had a way of settling slowly, and consequences rarely arrived all at once. Still, she felt ready. She had chosen this path carefully, and she would not step back now. Mark came to her later that morning. He did not knock. He hovered near the doorway like someone unsure of his place. His posture was different. His shoulders were tense, his eyes restless. Gone was the confidence that once filled the room. He began to speak, but his words stumbled. He said he never meant for things to go this far. He said stress had changed him. He said he felt attacked and reacted badly. He spoke quickly, afraid she might stop listening. Evelyn remained seated. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. She waited until he finished. Then she told him calmly that intent did not erase impact. She said harm was still harm, even when wrapped in excuses. She said she had given kindness freely and had been repaid with control and disrespect. Mark's voice broke. He asked for forgiveness. He said he could change. He said family should not be torn apart over misunderstandings. Evelyn looked at him steadily. She said forgiveness did not mean undoing boundaries. She said self-respect mattered too much to trade for guilt. Her words were not loud, but they were final. Laura stood nearby, holding her child close. The child was quiet, sensing the weight in the room without understanding it. Laura's face showed exhaustion, but also clarity. She had spent many nights thinking, remembering moments she once ignored. She saw them differently now. She told Mark she was leaving. Not in anger. Not in fear. But in truth. She said she needed space to heal. She said she wanted her child to grow up in a place where silence was not survival. She said she had lost herself slowly and needed to find herself again. Mark tried to protest, but his words felt empty. Laura had already decided. Evelyn watched her daughter pack carefully, helping when asked, respecting her choices. She felt pain, yes, but also relief. This leaving was not abandonment. It was recovery. Mark's mother reacted with bitterness. She blamed Evelyn for everything. She said the family was being destroyed by pride. She said Evelyn would regret this. Evelyn listened without responding. She understood now that some people never take responsibility. Their anger was not her burden. The days that followed were difficult. Boxes filled the rooms again, but this time, they did not belong to Evelyn. Mark and his mother moved through the house like strangers, touching things that were no longer theirs. Their voices were quieter now. The house did not echo for them. Neighbors noticed the change. Some offered help. Some offered quiet support. Evelyn accepted kindness with grace. She did not explain more than needed. The truth was enough. On the final day, Mark stood in the doorway one last time. He looked at the house as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The walls did not bend to his will. They never had. He said goodbye without meeting Evelyn's eyes. When the door closed behind them, the sound was soft, but the meaning was heavy. Evelyn stood still for a moment, then let out a long breath she felt she had been holding for months. Laura left later that day with her child. She hugged Evelyn tightly. She thanked her, not just for the house, but for the courage she had shown. Evelyn kissed her forehead and reminded her that strength was already inside her. When the house was finally empty, Evelyn walked through each room slowly. She opened windows. She moved furniture back. She placed her belongings where they belonged. In her old bedroom, she stood quietly. The space felt familiar again. She made the bed with care, smoothing the sheets, reclaiming not just a room, but a part of herself. That night, she slept deeply. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Not the old one. A better one. Evelyn spent time in her garden again. She repainted walls. She invited neighbors for tea. She laughed more easily. She trusted herself again. She thought about regret sometimes. Not her own, but Mark's. She wondered when it would truly reach him. When he would understand that power taken is never power kept. But she did not wait for that moment. She focused on peace. The house stood strong, just like the woman who had built her life within its walls. Evelyn had lost comfort for a time, but she had gained clarity. She had chosen herself. And that choice, once made, changed everything.